The sharp crack of a champagne flute hitting marble echoed through the upscale hotel ballroom, and Violet Reeves felt every eye turned toward her even though she'd been the one pouring, not dropping. She kept her expression neutral, her movements practiced as she continued serving at the charity gala, but her pulse hammered against her ribs. She'd learned long ago that invisibility was survival. In a room full of Seattle's elite, wearing a server's uniform was the best camouflage money couldn't buy. What she hadn't counted on was him. He stood near the tall windows overlooking the city, impossibly still in a way that made her instincts scream. White hair fell past his shoulders in a sleek cascade that caught the chandelier light, and his skin held that particular pallor that marked him as other. A vampire. And not just any vampire, judging by the way even the human socialites gave him a wide berth while pretending not to stare. His suit was impeccable, midnight black, with subtle embroidery at the cuffs that looked older than the building itself. When his eyes swept the room, they were the color of fresh blood under moonlight. Violet ducked her head and moved toward the kitchen, her tray balanced perfectly despite the tremor in her hands. She'd been in Seattle for 3 years now, working various service jobs, keeping her head down. The city had a significant vampire presence, but they rarely bothered with humans outside of carefully regulated blood donations and the occasional political maneuvering. She'd felt safe here. Anonymous. The girl with the champagne. The voice was like velvet dragged across stone, and it froze her mid-step. Violet turned slowly, keeping her expression professionally pleasant, even as her heart threatened to break through her chest. He was looking directly at her now, those crimson eyes fixed with an intensity that made her want to run. "Yes, sir?" She kept her voice steady, grateful for years of training that had nothing to do with serving drinks. He moved toward her with fluid grace, and she caught the faint scent of night-blooming jasmine and something darker, older. The crowd seemed to part without conscious thought, and then he was standing before her, close enough that she could see the intricate patterns embroidered on his collar. Up close he was devastating, all sharp angles and ageless beauty that made human attractiveness seem clumsy by comparison. "You carry yourself with unusual grace," he said, his accent placing him somewhere in Eastern Europe, though time had smoothed the edges. "Tell me your name." "Violet, sir. I'm one of the servers this evening." She met his eyes briefly, the way she'd been taught as a child, then looked away with appropriate deference. Not too submissive, not too bold. The middle path, his head tilted slightly, white hair sliding over his shoulder. "Just Violet?" "Violet Reeves, if you prefer formality." The lie came easily. She'd been using the name for 3 years, had documentation to back it up, had built an entire unremarkable life around it. Something flickered in his expression, too quick to read. Then he smiled, revealing elongated canines that should have looked threatening, but instead seemed almost beautiful in their predatory perfection. "I am Konstantin Dragomir, Lord of the Northwestern Territories and King of the Nightborn Court." Violet's blood turned to ice. A king. She'd been noticed by a vampire king. She managed a respectful nod, keeping her face carefully neutral. "An honor, Your Majesty. Is there something you require?" "Your time," he said simply. "After your shift concludes, I would speak with you." It wasn't a request. Violet understood power well enough to recognize an order wrapped in courtesy. "Of course, I finish at 11, I will wait." He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that somehow seemed more commanding than dismissive, and then he was moving away, returning to the shadows near the window where he could observe the room. Violet forced herself to continue working, to move through the crowd with practiced efficiency, but her mind raced. Why would a vampire king want to speak with her? She'd been so careful. 3 years without a single slip, 3 years of being nobody. She'd left that life behind, left the title and the expectations in the gilded cage. She was just Violet Reeves now, a woman who worked hard and kept to herself and wanted nothing more than ordinary anonymity. The rest of her shift crawled by with agonizing slowness. She was hyper-aware of Konstantin's presence, the way he moved through the gala with effortless authority, speaking with important humans and vampires alike. Several times she caught him watching her, his expression thoughtful, in a way that made her skin prickle with apprehension. When 11 finally arrived, Violet collected her coat from the staff room, said goodnight to the other servers, and stepped out into the cool Seattle night. Rain misted the air, typical for October, and the city lights blurred into watercolor washes against the darkness. Konstantin was waiting by a sleek black car, looking entirely unbothered by the rain that beaded on his hair like diamonds. His driver, another vampire with the same pale features, stood by the door. "I thought we might speak somewhere more private," Konstantin said. "Unless you prefer a public venue?" Violet hesitated. Getting into a car with a vampire king was objectively insane, but refusing him seemed equally dangerous. and at least in private whatever conversation he wanted to have wouldn't expose her to the scrutiny of others. I trust you'll behave as a gentleman, Your Majesty. His smile was sharp. I give you my word as king that you will come to no harm under my protection. The formal vow settled something in the air between them, weight and magic combined. Vampire oaths weren't given lightly. Violet nodded and slid into the car, the leather seats soft and expensive beneath her. Konstantin settled beside her with that same preternatural grace, and the driver pulled smoothly into traffic. Where are we going? She asked. My residence. It's not far. He was studying her again with that unsettling focus. Tell me, Violet Reeves, how does a woman of your obvious breeding find herself serving champagne at charity galas? Her stomach dropped. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? His voice was mild, but steel ran underneath. The way you walk, the precise angle of your head, the manner in which you make eye contact, brief but direct, showing neither fear nor challenge. You were trained in courtly manners, and trained well. Your hands are soft despite your work, suggesting your current employment is recent in the grand scheme of things. And your accent, while carefully neutralized, occasionally shows traces of something more refined. Violet kept her expression blank through sheer force of will. You're mistaken, I've worked service jobs for years. 3 years, he corrected. I had my people look into you while you finished your shift. Violet Reeves appeared in Seattle 3 years ago with adequate but unremarkable documentation. Before that, nothing, no history, no records, no digital footprint, which suggests either witness protection or someone running from their past. He leaned closer and she caught that jasmine scent again. I don't believe you're a criminal, Violet. Your bearing is too refined, your manners too ingrained, so that leaves running. The question is, from what? With respect, Your Majesty, my past is my own business. She met his eyes squarely this time, letting him see the steel beneath her careful facade. To her surprise, he smiled. Bravely spoken. Very well, I won't press. Tonight. The car pulled to a stop before a stunning building in the heart of downtown, all Art Deco elegance and carefully preserved historical detail. But I hope you'll indulge my curiosity on other matters. The penthouse was exactly what Violet expected from vampire royalty. Soaring ceilings, antique furniture mixed with modern comfort, and artwork that made her breath catch. She recognized a genuine Caravaggio on one wall, a piece she'd thought lost to private collections. The windows overlooked the entire city, rain-streaked glass transforming Seattle into an impressionist painting. Wine, Konstantin offered, moving to a sidebar that probably held bottles worth more than her annual salary. Thank you. She accepted the glass he poured, noting the vintage with a trained eye before catching herself. Stop. Don't give anything away. But he'd noticed, of course. That slight smile played at his lips again as he settled into a chair and gestured for her to take the sofa. You recognize the year, lucky guess. He sipped his own wine, though she knew vampires received no sustenance from it. A social courtesy then, putting her at ease. I'll be direct, Violet. I find you fascinating. In 300 years, I've learned to read people, human and vampire alike. You are a puzzle wrapped in deliberate obscurity, and I confess that intrigues me deeply. I'm really not that interesting, she said, aiming for lightness. Just a woman trying to make her way in the world. A woman who handles herself with the confidence of royalty while serving drinks. His eyes gleamed in the low light. A woman who sees a vampire king and shows appropriate respect without fear. That's unusual, Violet. Humans typically react with either terror or sycophantic ambition. You showed neither. Because she'd been raised alongside beings of power, taught that fear showed weakness and false flattery was beneath dignity. The words almost slipped out before she caught them. Perhaps I'm just good at my job. Customer service requires a certain demeanor. He set down his wineglass with deliberate care. I would like to see you again. Not as a king commanding, but as a man asking. Would you have dinner with me tomorrow evening? The request caught her off guard. You're asking me on a date? Yes, no hesitation, no embarrassment. I find myself drawn to your mystery. But more than that, I find myself drawn to you. The fire beneath your careful composure, the intelligence in your eyes, the way you hold yourself like a queen pretending to be common. I want to know you, Violet Reeves, whoever you truly are. It was dangerous. Everything about this was dangerous. Getting involved with a vampire king was the opposite of keeping a low profile. But when she looked at Konstantin, at the genuine interest in his ancient eyes, at the way he'd given her the choice rather than commanding her presence, something in her chest loosened. When was the last time someone had wanted to know her? Not Lady Victoria Ashford, not the carefully constructed Violet Reeves, but the person caught between those identities. All right, she heard herself say. Dinner, but somewhere quiet, please. His smile transformed his face from merely beautiful to absolutely radiant. I know just the place. I'll collect you at 8. Your address? She gave him the location of her small apartment in Capitol Hill, then let his driver take her home through the rain-soaked streets. As she climbed the stairs to her third-floor walk-up, so different from the mansion she'd grown up in, Violet wondered what she'd just agreed to. But beneath the apprehension, something else stirred. Anticipation, maybe. Or hope. The next day dragged interminably. Violet worked a lunch shift at a different venue, forcing herself to focus on orders and table service while her mind kept drifting to crimson eyes and white hair. What did one wear to dinner with a vampire king? Her wardrobe was deliberately modest, nothing that would draw attention. But she found herself pulling out a deep burgundy dress she'd bought on impulse months ago, and never worn, simple but elegant, with clean lines that skimmed her figure without ostentation. At precisely 8 o'clock, a knock sounded at her door. Violet checked the peephole, saw Konstantin waiting with his usual preternatural patience, and took a steadying breath before opening the door. His eyes widened fractionally as he took her in, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks. He'd dressed more casually than the previous night, black slacks and a charcoal shirt that somehow made his otherworldly features even more striking. "You're beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. "Thank you." She accepted, feeling the cool strength beneath his sleeve. "You clean up well yourself." His laugh was low and genuine. 300 years and I still appreciate a compliment. The restaurant was indeed quiet, a small Italian place tucked into a basement on First Hill. The owner greeted Konstantin by name, showing them to a private table in the back where candles cast dancing shadows and the scent of and fresh bread filled the air. "They know to accommodate my dietary restrictions," Konstantin explained as they settled in. "And their food is exceptional. Order anything you like." Violet scanned the menu, written in Italian, and without thinking ordered in the same language. The owner beamed and responded fluidly before heading to the kitchen. When she looked up, Konstantin was watching her with that intense focus again. "You speak Italian beautifully," he said. "Where did you learn?" Damn, she'd slipped. "I picked up some languages over the years. Travel, mostly." "And where have you traveled?" She should deflect, change the subject, but something about the intimate atmosphere and his genuine interest made the walls she'd built feel stifling. "Europe, mostly. England, France, Italy, some time in Switzerland." "The Grand Tour," he murmured. "Classical education for young nobility." Her fingers tightened on her wine glass. "You're very determined to make me into something I'm not." "I don't think I am." He leaned forward slightly, candlelight catching in his eyes. "I think I'm simply seeing what you're trying very hard to hide. But here's what I want you to understand, Violet. I don't care about your past, not in the way you fear. Whatever you're running from, whatever name you left behind, it matters far less to me than who you are in this moment." "And who am I in this moment?" "A mystery," he said softly. "A challenge. A woman who makes me feel something I haven't felt in decades. Curiosity, yes, but also connection. When I saw you last night moving through that crowd with such careful grace, I felt recognition. Like calling to like, I'm human," she pointed out. "You're a vampire king. We're not alike at all, aren't we? You wear a mask as surely as I do. You've learned to hide your true nature behind a role others expect. You understand power and its burdens." His hand crossed the table, stopping just short of touching hers. "Tell me I'm wrong." She couldn't, because he'd seen through her so completely, so quickly, that denial felt like an insult to them both. "You're not wrong," she admitted quietly. "But that doesn't mean I'm ready to take off the mask. I'm not asking you to. Not yet." His fingers brushed hers now, cool and gentle. "I'm only asking that you let me see glimpses of what's beneath. Let me know you, Violet, at whatever pace feels safe." Their food arrived, breaking the intensity of the moment. As they ate, Konstantin steered the conversation to safer topics. Art, music, the changing face of Seattle. He was surprisingly easy to talk to, his centuries of life giving him perspectives that fascinated her. He'd known Mozart personally, had watched empires rise and fall, had seen humanity evolve in ways both beautiful and terrible. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Being human?" He considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the sun most, I think. The warmth of it on my skin, the way light looked in daytime, but I don't regret what I am. This life has given me time to see wonders, to understand complexities that a human lifespan couldn't encompass." His eyes found hers, and it's led me to this moment which I wouldn't trade for all the sunrises in the world. The words settled between them, weighted with meaning. Violet felt something shift in her chest, walls crumbling just slightly. "You barely know me, then let me remedy that," he smiled. "Tell me something true. Anything. A piece of yourself you're willing to share." She thought about it, turning her wine glass slowly between her fingers. "I love the rain," she finally said. "Growing up, I was always stuck inside during storms, watching through windows. When I came to Seattle, I used to just walk in it for hours, letting it soak me completely, feeling free. Understanding flickered in his expression. A gilded cage, then. Whatever you left behind. The most beautiful cage imaginable, she acknowledged. But still a cage. And now? Now I'm free. Poor working jobs that would horrify my former self, living in a tiny apartment with neighbors who blast music at 2 a.m. And I've never been happier. She met his eyes. That's what I'm afraid of losing. This life I've built, small and ordinary and mine. Konstantin's expression softened. I have no intention of taking your freedom, Violet. If anything, I would see it protected. A king's resources should you want them, without obligation or expectation. He paused. Though I confess I hope you'll continue seeing me. Not from duty or fear, but because you want to. Did she want to? Violet examined her feelings carefully. The danger of exposure, yes, that was real. But beneath the fear, genuine interest sparked. Konstantin was brilliant and complex, carrying centuries with grace. He looked at her like she mattered, like her thoughts and words held value beyond social nicety. And there was something else, a pull she didn't quite understand, magnetic and undeniable. I want to, she admitted, though that probably makes me foolish. Or brave. His smile was warm. I'll take brave over cautious any day. They lingered over dinner, talking until the restaurant began preparing to close. When Konstantin's driver delivered her home, he walked her to her door, moving with that fluid grace that marked all his kind. Thank you for tonight, he said, taking her hand and brushing his lips across her knuckles in a gesture straight from another century. May I see you again? Yes, the answer came without hesitation this time. But Konstantin, please be patient with me. There are things I can't talk about yet. Maybe ever. I understand. He straightened, still holding her hand gently. We all have our secrets, Violet. I won't push for yours until you're ready to share them. Over the following weeks they fell into a pattern. Konstantin would appear at her various jobs, always respectful, always careful not to disrupt her work but making his interest clear. They'd meet for late dinners, long walks through rain-soaked streets, quiet evenings in his penthouse where he'd play centuries-old music on a piano that had belonged to Chopin himself. He introduced her to the parts of Seattle she'd never seen. Underground tunnels where vampire society thrived, exclusive clubs where immortals gathered, gardens maintained through the night by those who couldn't see them in sunlight. Violet found herself opening up in increments, sharing pieces of herself she'd kept locked away. She told him about her love of literature, and he filled her apartment with first editions. She mentioned missing horseback riding, and he arranged access to a private stable where she could ride at night, him keeping pace on a black stallion that seemed as otherworldly as its rider. But she didn't tell him about Victoria Ashford, daughter of Duke Harrison Ashford, one of England's most powerful noble families. She didn't mention the arranged marriage she'd fled, the expectations that had suffocated her, the title that would follow her forever if discovered. That part of her past remained locked away, even as she felt herself falling deeper for the vampire king, who'd seen through her disguises from the first moment. It was during their 6th week together that the fragile peace shattered. They were at a vampire gathering, a formal affair at an underground court where Konstantin had to make an appearance. Violet had dressed carefully in a black gown he'd sent over, something elegant but not too memorable. She stayed at his side, playing the role of companion, speaking when spoken to but mostly observing. That's when she saw him. Harrison Blackthorne, vampire lord and business partner of her father's. A vampire who'd visited the Ashford estate countless times, who'd certainly seen Victoria as a child and adolescent. His eyes swept the room and landed on her, and she watched recognition dawn in his expression. Violet's blood turned to ice. She gripped Konstantin's arm without thinking, and he immediately covered her hand with his attention sharpening. What is it? He asked quietly. I need to leave, now. He didn't question, didn't hesitate. Within moments they were moving toward the exit, but Harrison was faster. He intercepted them with a cold smile, his white hair braided in an elaborate style that spoke of old vampire traditions. Your Majesty, Harrison said, bowing to Konstantin. I hope you're enjoying the gathering. I was, Konstantin replied coolly. We were just departing. A shame. I was hoping to speak with your companion. Harrison's eyes fixed on Violet with predatory intent. It's been years, Lady Victoria. How is your esteemed father? The name fell like a bomb in the sudden silence. Violet felt every nearby vampire turn to look, felt Konstantin's hand tighten on hers. She lifted her chin, channeling every bit of aristocratic composure she'd been raised with. I'm afraid you're mistaken, she said clearly. My name is Violet Reeves. Harrison's smile widened. Is it? How interesting. You look remarkably like the Duke of Ashford's daughter. Same face, same bearing, same distinctive eyes. They're quite worried about you back in England, you know. There was some business about an engagement to the Earl of Somerset's son, and then you simply vanished. Very dramatic. Konstantin's presence beside her had gone utterly still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence. "Lord Harrison," he said, his voice dropping to a tone that made several vampires step back. "You seem to be harassing my guest." "Not at all, Your Majesty. Simply renewing an old acquaintance." But Harrison's smile faltered slightly under Konstantin's stare. "Though I'm sure the Duke would be most grateful to know his daughter is alive and well. Might even offer a substantial reward for such information." "Leave," Konstantin commanded, and power rolled through the word, ancient and absolute. "Now. And if I hear you've contacted anyone regarding this matter, I'll consider it a personal offense against me and mine." Harrison paled, which was impressive for someone already white-skinned. Threatening a vampire king was suicide, and everyone in the room knew it. He bowed stiffly and retreated, but the damage was done. Violet could feel the stares, hear the whispers starting. "Come," Konstantin said gently, guiding her toward the exit. They didn't speak until they were in his car, the privacy screen raised. Violet stared at her hands, watching them tremble slightly despite her best efforts at control. "Lady Victoria Ashford," Konstantin said quietly. "Daughter of Duke Harrison Ashford, that's who you were." "Yes, no point denying it now. I ran 3 years ago, 2 weeks before my wedding. I couldn't do it, Konstantin. Couldn't marry a man I barely knew for political advantage, couldn't spend my life as a decorative piece in someone else's game. So I ran. Why didn't you tell me?" She finally looked at him, seeing not anger but something that looked like hurt in his ancient eyes. "Because I didn't want to be her anymore. Victoria Ashford is dead, buried under a life I hated. I'm Violet Reeves now. Free, ordinary mine. You thought I'd care about a title? I thought you'd see me differently, as an asset to be used or a problem to be managed. Everyone else in my life did." Her voice cracked slightly. "I thought you'd stop seeing me and start seeing what I could bring to your court, your alliances, your political games." Konstantin reached across the seat and cupped her face gently, tilting it until she met his eyes. "Look at me, Violet, truly look." His expression was open, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "I fell in love with a woman who walks in the rain, who speaks 6 languages and blushes when I compliment her, who rides horses like she was born to it and laughs at my terrible jokes about historical events. The woman you are, not the title you carried. You love me." The words came out barely above a whisper. "Desperately." He smiled, soft and real. "Did you not know? I thought I'd been painfully obvious. I thought you were intrigued, curious about the mystery. I am. But Violet, intrigue fades. What I feel for you has only grown stronger every day. Every conversation, every moment, every glimpse you've given me of your true self. I love you." His thumb brushed her cheek. "Whether you're Violet Reeves or Victoria Ashford or anyone else, the soul beneath the name is what matters." Tears pricked her eyes and she didn't try to stop them. "I love you too. I didn't want to. It wasn't part of the plan, but you made me feel seen in a way I never have been." He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, tasting of wine and something uniquely him. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "Harrison will talk, you know that." "I know." She'd been trying not to think about it. "My father will find out where I am. He'll come for me, or send people. He's not the type to accept defiance. Let him come." Konstantin's voice hardened to steel. "You're under my protection now, Violet. As my lover, and if you'll have me, as my future queen. No one, human or vampire, touches what's mine." The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, she felt safe for the first time since Harrison had spoken her name. "Your queen, if you'll have me. I know it's fast by human standards, but I've lived long enough to recognize something precious when I find it. I want you by my side, Violet, not as a political asset, not as a decorative piece, but as my partner, my equal." His eyes searched hers. "What do you say?" "I say yes." The answer came from her heart, unfiltered by fear or doubt. "But Konstantin, I need you to understand, I won't go back to being caged, even a golden cage as your queen. Then we'll redefine what it means to be queen." He kissed her again, deeper this time. "You'll have all the freedom you want, all the choices you deserve. I'll stand beside you, not over you." They returned to his penthouse and spent the night wrapped in each other, sharing touches and whispered promises. Konstantin was gentle, reverent, treating her like something precious, even as passion burned between them. Violet felt barriers crumble, letting herself be vulnerable in ways she'd never imagined. In the pale hours before dawn, as she lay against his chest listening to his slow heartbeat, reality intruded. "He really will come, you know, my father. And he's powerful, Konstantin. He has connections everywhere, influence that spans continents, so do I." Konstantin's fingers traced patterns on her shoulder. "I'm a king, beloved. And more than that, I've spent 3 centuries building alliances, gathering favors owed. Let your father come. Let him see what you've chosen and who you've chosen it with." 3 days later, Duke Harrison Ashford arrived in Seattle with an entourage that made his importance painfully clear. Violet learned of his presence from a text from Konstantin. "Your father's in the city. He's requested an audience. I've granted it for tonight at the court. You don't have to attend if you don't want to." But she did want to. She needed to face this, to make her choice clear. She texted back, "I'll be there. We'll face him together." The underground court was at its most impressive that evening, clearly prepared to receive human nobility. Vampire lords and ladies lined the great hall, all pale skin and elegant attire, their presence a reminder that Konstantin ruled beings of significant power. He sat on an ornate throne, every inch the king, and when Violet entered wearing a gown of midnight blue, he descended the dais to greet her personally. "My lady," he said formally, offering his hand, "you honor us with your presence." She placed her hand in his, feeling strength and support in his cool grip. "My king." He led her to a smaller throne beside his own, and she understood the statement he was making. Equal, not subordinate. Partner, not possession. When she sat, he returned to his own seat, and together they waited. Duke Harrison Ashford entered with the confidence of a man accustomed to obedience. He was still impressive at 60, silver-haired and commanding, wearing his title like armor. His eyes swept the court, cataloging and assessing, before landing on Violet. Something flickered in his expression. Relief, maybe, or vindication. "Victoria," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "Thank God. We've been searching everywhere, Father." She kept her tone neutral. "I go by Violet now." "Nonsense. You're Victoria Ashford, daughter of the Duke of Ashford, and you belong at home." He turned to Konstantin, offering a respectful but not subservient bow. "Your Majesty, I'm grateful you've kept my daughter safe. I'm prepared to offer significant compensation for your trouble." "She's not a lost dog to be returned for a reward," Konstantin said coldly. "And she's here by choice." Harrison's expression hardened. "She's my daughter and legally under my authority until she marries, which she will as soon as I return her to England. The Earl of Somerset has been very patient, but there are limits." "I'm not marrying Edmund Somerset," Violet said clearly. "I'm not going back to England. I'm staying here." "You're 23 years old, Victoria. You don't get to simply run away from your responsibilities." "I'm 26 now, Father. I've been gone 3 years, built a life, made my choices. I'm not that frightened girl anymore." Harrison's face reddened. "You've been working as a servant." "A servant? Do you have any idea the embarrassment, the scandal? The Ashford name dragged through mud because my daughter decided to play at being common?" "I wasn't playing," Violet said, standing. Konstantin rose beside her, a silent pillar of support. "I was surviving. I was finding out who I am without the weight of expectations and duty crushing me. And I found more than survival, Father. I found love." She reached for Konstantin's hand, and he took it immediately, his fingers lacing with hers. The gesture was clear, unmistakable. Harrison's eyes widened. "You can't be serious. A vampire?" "Victoria, think about what you're saying." "I have thought about it. More than I ever thought about marrying Edmund Somerset, whom you arranged for me to wed without once asking what I wanted." Her voice strengthened. "I love Konstantin. He sees me, Father. Not the title, not the family name, not the political advantages. Me, and I'm choosing him." "He's using you," Harrison snapped. "Using our family's influence and connections, can't you see that?" "I have no need of human influence," Konstantin interjected, his voice deadly quiet. "I rule the vampires of the Northwestern Territories. I have wealth beyond measure and power beyond your comprehension. I don't need your daughter's title. I want her heart, which she's given freely." "This is insanity." Harrison turned to the assembled vampires, appealing to them. "She's clearly under some influence. Mind control, perhaps, or vampire manipulation. I demand she be released." One of the vampire lords, an ancient woman named Seraphina, laughed coldly. "You demand nothing here. Human, and mind control leaves traces we would sense. The girl speaks with her own will." "Then I'll take this to the council," Harrison threatened. "The supernatural human accords have rules about this sort of thing." "They have rules about consent and free will," Konstantin corrected, "both of which Violet has demonstrated repeatedly. You have no authority here, Duke Ashford. Your daughter is of age, sound mind, and making her own choices. Choices I support absolutely." Harrison's expression cycled through anger, frustration, and finally landed on something calculating. He looked at Violet, really looked at her, and his voice softened. "Is this truly what you want, Victoria? To throw away everything you were raised for, everyone who loves you?" The manipulation was obvious, but the question beneath it was real. Violet felt the weight of her old life, the people she'd left behind. "You never loved me, Father. You loved what I represented." Another piece in your political games. "Mother's the same. I was raised by nannies and tutors, taught to be perfect and silent and obedient." She squeezed Konstantin's hand. Konstantin loves me, the real me, messy and stubborn and free. So yes, this is what I want, then you're making the biggest mistake of your life. Harrison's voice went cold. I'll disown you, cut you off completely. The Ashford name, the fortune, the title, all of it gone. Good. The word came out firm and clear. I don't want them. I never did. For a long moment father and daughter stared at each other across the divide of the court. Then Harrison straightened every inch the Duke. Very well. As of this moment you're no longer my daughter, no longer an Ashford. You'll receive nothing from the family. And your name will be stricken from our records. It should have hurt. Maybe it would later. But in that moment Violet felt only relief, like chains falling away. I understand. Goodbye, father. Harrison turned on his heel and strode from the court, his entourage scrambling to follow. The great doors closed behind them with a resounding boom and silence fell. Then Konstantin turned to Violet, his eyes searching her face. Are you all right? I'm free, she said, and laughed, the sound bright and genuine. I'm actually free. No more looking over my shoulder, no more hiding, just me. He pulled her into his arms and the court erupted in applause, vampires celebrating in their own way. Serafina approached the dais, her ancient face creased in a rare smile. So this is your chosen queen, Konstantin? If she'll still have me, he said, looking down at Violet. She will, Violet confirmed. Though I have conditions, his eyebrows rose. Oh? I want to finish my education, a real one. Not just the polite accomplishments I was taught. I want to work if I choose to, in whatever capacity interests me. And I want our court to be different, more open, more free. She looked around at the assembled vampires. I want to matter, not just wear a crown. All of that can be arranged, Konstantin said seriously. Though I should warn you, being vampire queen comes with its own responsibilities. Are you prepared for that? If you're beside me, I can handle anything. He kissed her then, in front of his entire court, claiming her as his in the most public way possible. When they parted, he turned to address the assembly. Lady Violet Reeves, formerly of the Ashford line, now of her own making. I claim her as my queen and consort. Who stands witness? We stand witness, the court responded in unison, the words echoing with ritual power. Violet felt something shift in the air around her, magic recognizing and sealing the bond. It didn't change her, didn't make her vampire, but it marked her as Konstantin's. Under his protection and power, the celebration that followed was unlike anything Violet had experienced. Vampires danced with inhuman grace, music filling the underground chambers. Konstantin introduced her to his inner circle, vampires who'd served him for decades or centuries, each offering congratulations and respect. They treated her not as a human oddity but as their future queen, and Violet found herself rising to the role naturally. Later, much later, they returned to the penthouse. Rain pattered against the windows, and Violet stood looking out at the city she'd made her home, feeling Konstantin's presence at her back. No regrets, he asked softly. None, she turned to face him. Though I am curious about something. When did you know? That I was nobility? He smiled. The moment I saw you. The way you moved, the precise control, the carefully neutral expression that spoke of years navigating treacherous social waters. I've known enough aristocrats to recognize the type. His hand came up to cup her cheek. But I didn't care about confirming it because it didn't matter. I wanted to know you, not your pedigree. Harrison recognized me after 6 weeks. You must have suspected from the start. I did, and I had my people research, found the missing Lady Victoria Ashford, saw your photograph. You hadn't changed much, just softened without the weight of expectation. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I knew after third date that you were her, but you seemed so desperate to leave that life behind. I didn't want to force you to confront it before you were ready. You were waiting for me to tell you. I was. And I would have waited forever if necessary. His expression grew serious. I need you to understand something, Violet. When I saw you that first night, when I recognized the masks you wore because I wear my own, I knew you were important. But I didn't know how important until you smiled at something I said during our second dinner. It was genuine, unguarded, and it took my breath away. That's when I fell in love, and every moment since has only confirmed it. Violet felt tears prick her eyes. I spent my whole life being told what to be, how to act, who to marry. You're the first person who ever asked what I wanted, and what do you want, my love? This. She gestured to encompass everything. The city, the penthouse, him. A life I choose, adventures I haven't planned. The freedom to be whoever I'm becoming. She stepped closer, rising on her toes to kiss him. And you, always you. He swept her into his arms, carrying her toward the bedroom with supernatural ease. Then you'll have it all, I swear it on my crown and my heart. They made love slowly, thoroughly, mapping each other with hands and lips and whispered words. Konstantin was gentle but passionate, treating her like something precious while also meeting her fire with his own. When dawn approached and he had to retreat from the windows, Violet lay in his arms feeling complete in a way she'd never imagined possible. The following weeks were a whirlwind of change. Konstantin kept his promises, enrolling Violet in the University of Washington, where she threw herself into studying literature and history. She kept working part-time despite having no financial need, because she enjoyed the normalcy of it, and she began learning what it meant to be vampire queen, attending court functions, mediating disputes, helping Konstantin navigate the complex politics of immortal society. She proved surprisingly good at it. Her aristocratic training, the very thing she'd run from, gave her tools to navigate vampire hierarchy. But she brought something new too: empathy, creativity, and a willingness to question traditions that no longer served. Under her influence, the Northwestern court began to change. They opened shelters for humans who'd been victimized by rogue vampires, established better protocols for blood donation that ensured consent and safety, and created cultural exchange programs between human and vampire societies. Violet's insistence on doing things differently made some of the older vampires grumble, but Konstantin supported her absolutely, and his word was law. 3 months after her father's visit, another letter arrived, this one from her mother. Violet almost didn't open it, but Konstantin encouraged her to at least read it. The letter was brief. "Victoria, your father forbade me from contacting you, but I'm old enough to defy him when it matters. I wanted you to know that while I don't understand your choices, I recognize your happiness. I've seen the photographs in the society pages, seen you smiling beside that vampire king in a way you never smiled at home. I failed you as a mother. I let your father dictate your upbringing, let you be raised for duty rather than joy. I'm sorry for that. Sorrier than words can express. If you're ever willing, I'd like to meet this man who makes my daughter smile like that. No expectations, no demands. Just a mother wanting to know her child is truly happy. With love, I should have shown better." Eleanor Ashford. Violet read the letter 3 times, emotions warring in her chest. Konstantin found her on the balcony, the letter crumpled in her hand. "Do you want to see her?" he asked gently. "I don't know. Part of me wants to slam the door on that whole life. But she's my mother, and this is the first time she's ever defied father for me." "Then, invite her. On your terms, in your territory. Let her see what you've built." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "And I'll be right beside you." Eleanor Ashford arrived 2 weeks later, traveling alone, which spoke volumes about her determination. Violet met her at a cafe near the university, neutral territory, with Konstantin waiting nearby but out of sight in case she needed him. Her mother looked older than Violet remembered, more fragile. When she saw Violet, her expression crumpled slightly before she composed herself. "You look well," Eleanor said softly. "Different, happier." "I am." Violet gestured to the seat across from her. "Thank you for coming." They talked for 2 hours, carefully at first, then with increasing honesty. Eleanor apologized repeatedly for her failures as a mother, for prioritizing social standing over her daughter's well-being. Violet found herself able to forgive, not forget, but release some of the old anger. "Tell me about him," Eleanor finally said. "This vampire king who's captured your heart." Violet smiled, unable to help herself. "He's brilliant and ancient and sees me in a way no one else ever has. He challenges me to be better while accepting me exactly as I am. He's given me freedom and love in equal measure. Does he treat you well? Better than well. He treats me like I'm his equal in every way that matters." Violet pulled out her phone, showing her mother pictures from various court functions, candid shots of her and Konstantin together. "He's protective but not controlling, powerful but not cruel. Everything I didn't know I needed." Eleanor studied the photographs, her expression thoughtful. "You really do love him, with everything I am. Then I'm happy for you, Victoria. Truly." She reached across the table, taking Violet's hand. "I know I have no right to ask, but might I meet him? Just briefly?" Violet texted Konstantin, and within minutes he appeared, moving through the cafe with that supernatural grace. Eleanor stood as he approached, and Violet watched her mother take in his otherworldly beauty, the power that radiated from him. "Your Majesty," Eleanor said, offering a respectful curtsy that spoke of her own noble training. "Thank you for making time to see me, Duchess Ashford." Konstantin's tone was polite but reserved. "Violet speaks highly of you." "I doubt that's entirely true, but I appreciate the courtesy." Eleanor met his eyes squarely. "I wanted to thank you for caring for my daughter when her own family failed her. I care for her because of who she is, not in spite of her family." His hand found Violet's shoulder, a possessive but gentle gesture. "She's remarkable, as I'm sure you know." "I'm beginning to understand just how remarkable." Eleanor smiled sadly. "I hope you'll both forgive an old woman's mistakes and perhaps allow me back into Victoria's life. On her terms, of course." Violet looked at her mother, really looked, and saw genuine regret and hope. Violet, she corrected gently. Victoria is who I was, but yes, we can try, slowly. They parted with careful hugs and promises to stay in touch. As Konstantin drove her home, Violet felt something settle in her chest. Not quite closure, but a path forward that didn't require burning every bridge. How do you feel? Konstantin asked. Lighter, she said. Like I can finally move forward instead of just running away. He smiled, that beautiful expression that still made her heart skip. Good, because I have something to ask you. Oh? They pulled up to the penthouse and he led her inside where he'd clearly been planning something. Candles lit the space and soft music played. In the center of the room, on a pedestal of black marble, sat a crown unlike anything Violet had ever seen. It was wrought of silver and dark gems, elegant and fierce, modern but timeless. I had this made for you, Konstantin said, leading her to it. A crown for a queen who chooses her own path. But before I ask you to wear it formally, I want to ask you something else. He knelt, an immortal king, on one knee and pulled out a ring box. Violet Reeves, formerly Victoria Ashford, currently the woman who owns my heart entirely. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my queen, my partner in all things for as long as we both exist? The ring was simple compared to the crown, a single perfect diamond set in platinum. It was beautiful in its simplicity, so different from the ostentatious jewelry she'd grown up around. Yes, the word came out choked with emotion. Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted of forever. When they parted, both smiling, Violet looked at the crown waiting for her. When? She asked. Whenever you're ready, tomorrow, next year, a century from now. I'm immortal, beloved, I can wait. Not too long, she decided. Maybe spring? I'd like to have a ceremony that's ours, blending human and vampire tradition. Then spring it is. He kissed her again, softer this time. I love you, Violet, every version of you, past and present and future. I love you too. She leaned into his embrace, feeling safe and cherished and free. Thank you for seeing me, the real me. Always, he promised. Always. The wedding took place in April in an underground garden that Konstantin's people had cultivated for centuries. Flowers that bloomed only in darkness filled the space with perfume, and crystals embedded in the ceiling cast light like stars. The ceremony blended vampire and human traditions, blood vows exchanged alongside rings, ancient words in dead languages mixed with modern promises of partnership and love. Eleanor attended, one of the few humans present, and Violet saw tears in her mother's eyes as she walked down the aisle alone, choosing to give herself rather than be given. Konstantin waited at the altar in black and silver, looking every inch the vampire king. But his eyes held only love and wonder as she approached. They spoke their vows with the entire court as witness, promising not just love but freedom, not just partnership but growth. When Konstantin placed the crown on her head, Violet felt the weight of it, literal and metaphorical, but also felt his steady presence beside her. My queen, he said softly, for her ears only. My love, my Violet, my king, she responded. My partner, my choice. The celebration lasted 3 days, as was vampire tradition for royal weddings. Humans and vampires mingled freely, barriers slowly dissolving under Violet's insistence on integration. She danced with her husband, with vampire lords, with her mother, feeling joy bubble up like champagne. On the 4th day, exhausted but happy, she and Konstantin retreated to his private chambers. Their chambers now, she corrected herself. Home. Any regrets, he asked, echoing his question from months ago. Not a single one. She turned in his arms, the crown still on her head, his queen in truth now. This is everything I never knew I wanted. What did you want? Before all this. She thought about it, remembering the girl who'd fled England in the middle of the night. Freedom, mostly. The ability to choose. To matter as myself, not as someone's daughter or wife or political asset. And now? Now I have all that and more. I have love, purpose, partnership. I have you, she smiled. I wanted to matter, and I do, but not just as your queen, as myself. You've always mattered, Konstantin said seriously. Long before you were my queen. You mattered the moment I saw you, the moment you smiled, the moment you trusted me with pieces of yourself. He kissed her forehead. And you'll matter for as long as I exist, which, barring catastrophe, will be a very long time. About that. Violet bit her lip. I've been thinking. I'm human, Konstantin. I'm going to age, eventually die. You'll be exactly as you are now. I know. His expression grew solemn. I've thought about it too, extensively. And I'll love you for every moment we have, whether that's 50 years or 500. If you choose to remain human, I'll cherish every year, every gray hair, every laugh line. I'll hold your hand when the time comes and grieve you until the world ends. He paused. But there is another option if you wanted it. Her heart skipped. Transformation, yes. It's not a decision to make lightly. Becoming vampire means leaving humanity behind, means never seeing the sun again, means drinking blood to survive. It means watching human friends age and die while you remain unchanged. It's a profound sacrifice. But it would mean eternity with you. It would. But Violet, I need you to understand that I love you either way. Human or vampire, mortal or immortal, you're my choice. Don't make this decision for me. Make it for yourself. She appreciated that more than she could say. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. Like I said, I'm not going anywhere. Violet spent months considering it, weighing the costs and benefits. She talked to vampires who'd been transformed, learning about the process and the aftermath. She researched everything she could about vampire existence, the limitations and the gifts. And she thought about what she wanted her life, or lives, to look like. Finally, on their first anniversary, she gave Konstantin her answer. I want to be transformed. Not because I'm afraid of aging or death, but because I'm not done. Not with you, not with what we're building together. I want centuries to change the world, to love you, to become everything I'm capable of being. He'd kissed her then, deep and passionate and laced with relief. Are you certain? Once done, it can't be undone. I'm certain. I choose this, I choose you, I choose forever. The transformation process was carefully planned. Konstantin explained every step, ensuring she understood what would happen. They chose the winter solstice for the ritual, the longest night of the year, symbolic of the darkness she'd embrace. When the time came, Violet wasn't afraid. She lay in Konstantin's arms in their chambers, candles casting dancing shadows, and looked into his ancient eyes. I'm ready. He kissed her one last time with her human warmth, then his fangs sank into her throat. The pain was sharp but brief, followed by a pulling sensation as he drank deeply. Violet felt her life draining away, her heartbeat slowing, and instead of fear she felt peace. When she was on the edge of death, Konstantin bit his own wrist and pressed it to her lips. Drink, my love, drink and be reborn. His blood was strange, cold and electric, but she drank deeply, feeling it burn through her veins like ice and fire combined. Power flooded her body, remaking her from the inside out. Her heart stopped, and for a moment there was nothing. Then she gasped, eyes flying open, and the world was different. Everything was sharper, clearer, more vivid. She could hear Konstantin's slow heartbeat, smell the candles in the night air, and something else. Something that called to the new hunger awakening in her. She could see in perfect detail despite the low light, every shadow and texture crystalline. Violet? Konstantin's voice was cautious, hopeful. How do you feel? She sat up, marveling at the strength in her limbs, the power coursing through her. When she caught sight of herself in the mirror, she gasped. Her skin had paled to moonlight, her hair had lightened to platinum, and her eyes held an inner glow. She looked otherworldly. Beautiful vampire. I feel incredible, she breathed. Is it always like this? The intensity fades slightly as you adjust, but yes, welcome to immortality, my queen. He pulled her close and she could feel his joy and relief. Welcome to forever. Learning to be vampire took time. Konstantin taught her to control her strength, to move with supernatural speed, to hear heartbeats from rooms away. The hardest part was the blood hunger, learning to feed without killing, to take only what was needed from willing donors. But she mastered it all with determination, growing into her new existence with grace. The court celebrated their vampire queen, and Violet found new purpose in her transformed state. She could work tirelessly now without fatigue, could use vampire abilities to help in ways she couldn't before. She established programs for newly turned vampires, helping them adjust as she had. She became a bridge between human and vampire worlds, understanding both in ways few could. Years passed, then decades. Violet watched the world change, technology advancing, social structures shifting. She stayed in touch with her mother until Eleanor's peaceful death at 87, holding her hand as she had once promised. She mourned but didn't regret, knowing she'd made peace with that relationship. Through it all, Konstantin was her constant. They ruled together, truly as partners, their love deepening with every passing year. They traveled the world, saw wonders human and supernatural, built a court known for its progressive policies and genuine care for both vampires and humans. On their 50th anniversary, Violet stood on the balcony of their penthouse, looking out at Seattle transformed by half a century of progress. Konstantin joined her, slipping his arms around her waist. Happy anniversary, my love, he murmured. 50 years. She leaned back against him. It feels like yesterday and forever ago all at once. Do you ever miss it? Being human? She considered the question honestly. Sometimes I miss the sun. And I miss my mother. But I don't regret this choice. Every year with you has been a gift. We have an eternity more of them. Good. She turned in his arms, her vampire queen crown catching the moonlight. Because I'm not nearly done loving you yet. He kissed her, and the city sparkled below them, full of possibility and hope. Violet thought about the frightened girl who'd fled England so long ago, about the woman who'd hidden her nobility behind a server's uniform, about the moment a vampire king had seen through all her masks to the person beneath. She'd spent so long running from who she was supposed to be. But here in Konstantin's arms, ruling beside him as his equal, she'd finally found who she was meant to become. Not Lady Victoria Ashford, bound by duty and expectation. Not Violet Reeves, hiding in anonymity. But simply Violet, vampire queen, beloved wife, and exactly who she chose to be. "I love you," she said, the words as true now as they'd been the first time she'd spoken them. "I love you," he responded. "For 50 years and 50 more and every year beyond that. Forever, my Violet." And in the eternal night that was now her home, held by the vampire king who'd loved her from the first moment, Violet smiled. This was her happy ending and her happy beginning, and every beautiful moment in between. The rain began to fall, that familiar Seattle rain she'd always loved, and together they stood watching it paint the city in silver. Free, loved, and exactly where they belonged. Together forever, and that was everything she'd ever truly wanted.